Hi boys and girls, this is lesson 95 in your Saxon book, which is on page 493, and it is entitled Reducing Rates Before Multiplying. This lesson is related to a previous lesson that we have done, which was called cross-canceling before multiplying. And just a real quick review, we learned that when you are multiplying fractions, that there's an easy kind of a shortcut that you can do before you multiply, where you can actually cross cancel before you multiply, and that will help you end up with a simplified or reduced fraction as your product. We learned sometimes that it doesn't actually always work. Sometimes you even have to simplify your product at the end, but it does end up with a simplified fraction to some degree, and sometimes you can't simplify it any further. So the steps that you would go through to simplify your fractions before you multiply is that you would look at your numerators and your denominators and find any relationships that you can see. So as I'm looking at these, I actually see that this 2 can be related to this 4 or the 6. So I could either go from the 2 with the 4 or the 2 with the 6. I'm going to go with the 4. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then I have a 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. And now I can multiply straight across. 1 times 1 times 1, 1. And 2 times 1 times 2 is 4. And I have a simplified product of 1/4, which of course cannot be simplified any further. So 1/4 is my product, my final answer, 1/4. Simplifying or cross-canceling before you multiply. It's a handy little tool because, as you can see, had we not done that, we would have had 3 times 2, 6 times 5, which is 30, and we would have had a much larger denominator. So it really is kind of a shortcut when you're multiplying fractions. The lesson today is how we can use this same skill to simplify our units when we're multiplying fractions. Real quick, before we get into that, let's remember what a ratio is. A ratio is a comparison of two numbers by division. So it's important to remember a ratio, what the ratio is, because when you're talking about units and fractions, a lot of times that's involves using a ratio. So when we're talking about lessons like that, it's good to remember your previous learning. So today we're going to talk about if you have units in your problem. For instance, if I had this problem that said, I am traveling 4 miles per hour. So let's remember that this means when we put that little division symbol, it means per. So 4 miles per hour. And I'm going to travel for 2 hours. How far would I expect to be after traveling 4 miles per hour? And I know many of you are sitting there and you're like, that's easy. I know it's 8 hours. This is true, but remember, as you go up in math, it's going to get a lot more difficult. So you need to understand the process of how to set up a problem and how to work with your units so that you will be able to solve more difficult problems when the time comes. So the way you would set it up is a multiplication problem, and you can use the cross-canceling of units. So we can look here and see there are hours and hours. So we can cross-cancel out our hours, and then we would multiply 4 times 2, which is 8. And the miles is here, so it would be 8 miles. And then we know this would be a 1, and any number over 1 is that number. So the answer to this problem would be 8 miles. So you would expect to travel 8 miles in this problem. So those of you that knew the answer was 8, you are correct. But it's important that you know how to set up a problem and work with units so that you end up with the correct answer in the end. Here's another one. What if you are traveling 55 miles per hour and you are going to travel for 6 hours? how far would you expect to get? So 55 miles. So once again, what are we going to cancel? We are going to cancel out the units of hours, and we are going to multiply 55 times 6. Sometimes I like to do it like this. 50 times 6 plus 5 times 6. Well, I know that this is 300, and I know that this is 30, so I know that 300 plus 30 is 330 miles. So the answer to this problem would be 330 miles. The next problem has to do with feet and inches. So we'll do one more problem, and then that should be it for this lesson. If I have 5 feet, and I know that there are 12 inches per 1 foot, then how many inches do I have? And some of you already know the answer. But remember, in the future, you're going to have a problem with much more difficult numbers. You need to know how to solve it. So we would set up a multiplication problem. These units are going to cancel out. And then, of course, I've got 5 times 12. And I'm pretty sure everybody has that committed to memory. 60 inches would be the answer. So in this lesson, we've learned that you can cancel out units just like we did numbers when we were multiplying fractions. It's important that you write down your units and you keep it all straight. It's important that you're writing neatly. That is such an important skill in math, because as you move on up into the next levels of math and you have negative numbers and you've got units and you've got variables, neatness and writing neatly and keeping track of what you're doing is going to be super important, because that's the only way you're going to end up with the correct answer. And when you don't end up with the right answer and you have to go back and rework it, and doing that over and over again, that's no fun. So make sure you're neat, make sure you're careful, pay attention to detail because it matters. Try your best. Lesson 95, cross-canceling with rates and units before multiplying. See you later.